During the Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902, the British Army, at the height of its power, was taught some embarrassing lessons by the Boer commanders. These men, recruited from principally the farms of the High Veld of South Africa, were equipped though with some of the most modern weapons available: the K98 Mauser rifle and modern quick-firing Krupp artillery. Before the war had even finished, committees back in Britain were sitting to examine the problems and the modernisations in equipment that the British Army needed to produce. And one of these first to come to fruition was the artillery. In 1904, the 18-pounder and its smaller cousin, the 13-pounder, for use with horse artillery units, were in production and being issued. This was followed in 1908 by the 4.5-inch howitzer. By 1914, in the outbreak of the Great War, some 1,200 18-pounder guns were in service with the British Expeditionary Force in France and Flanders. But by the end of the war, some 9,500 guns were in service with the British Army. These guns fired, during those tremendous years, a prodigious amount of ammunition, 86 million rounds. And the gun was still in service in 1939 at the outbreak of the Second World War. But it is the service of the 18-pounder and the 13-pounder during the Great War that we'll be looking at during the course of this programme. Great War guns that are still available outside a museum are very rare. Fortunately, the Royal Artillery has 2 of these guns available to it today.
On the left is the 13-pounder, which is a horse artillery gun, and on the right, with its detachment busy giving it a final buff-up, is the 18-pounder, which was used by the field batteries of the Royal Field Artillery. There was a third gun, the 4.5-inch howitzer, but we don't have one here today. Now, if I can just tell you a little bit about these guns. Firstly, we'll start with a 13-pounder. The most obvious thing is the spoked wheels, which were very typical of the time, and they were designed to be easily manufactured and were completely interchangeable right across the range of field guns. The gun itself has got the barrel mounted underneath the recoil mechanism.
So this is the recoil mechanism.
That's the recoil mechanism, which is on top of the gun, and when the gun,
obviously the barrel,
and that's the barrel, 3 inches in diameter, 76.
That's the
yeah, or caliber as it's called, and you can just see the tip of the rifling at the tip of the muzzle. The shell weight was, as the designation suggests, is 13 pounds. It was just a little over 13 pounds, and it had a range of just under 6,000 yards.
6,000 yards? How does that compare with modern ranges?
Pretty short. A modern field gun, the 105mm, has a range of 17,000 metres. Round at the back of the gun, you can see the breech and the sighting mechanism. There's no breech block in this one today, but you can see very clearly the interrupted screw thread, which, when the breech was turned, then locked it in position and clamped it at the rear of the cartridge. There's also the sight, what was called the rocking bar, to which the telescope was attached for direct fire shooting. The sight bracket, into which the dial sight was set.
What was the dial sight for?
The dial sight was enabled to orient it in relationship to north.
Okay.
And the range drum, which was marked with degrees on the outside and the range on the inside, which allowed the layer to set the range that the gun was going to fire on. Underneath the gun is the pole trail, which allowed it to be towed. And this is one of the design constraints on the both the 13-pounder and the 18-pounder. They had to have a single pole trail in order to keep the weight down, and the weight was important because it had to be towed behind a team of 6 horses. But it did constrict the ability of the gun to be able to elevate, and it could only make 16 degrees of elevation, which in turn affected the range.
Really up! Up! Keep moving, leaders, centres, wheelers, keep going. Down! Steady, steady! Forward! In, mount!